Hello and welcome to the final showcase of my game world I have created for Game Asset Pipeline. Here is a mood board I created consisting of possible textures I could use, pieces of inspiration, goals, and a brief design of the layout of the environment. My goal when creating this environment was to recreate a world similar to the world in the game The Hunter Call of the Wild by Expansive Worlds. I chose The Hunter as a primary inspiration due to the atmosphere the game creates. The Hunter is a very immersive and realistic looking game, and has a very real feeling to it, and I would hope to achieve the same in my game world. Here you can see my GitHub repository, where I have saved versions of the environment and assets from version 1, which would be whiteboxing, to the final versions. Here is version 1, where I added Pro Builder shapes and a terrain to begin development. In version 2 I used the terrain tool to transform the terrain and mould out hills and a lake. In version 3 I created a new tree prefab and added some deer models. On the 4th version I added more terrains and used the terrain tool to create mountings surrounding the original scene to remove any empty space from the background. On version 5 I began texturing by adding a grass texture to the forest, stone textures to the mountains, and snow onto the top of the mountains. I also added a custom skybox made using Photoshop. In version 6 I created a waterfall using Unity's particle system. In version 7 I added some more assets I made using Maya. These were grass and flowers. In version 8 I updated the deer assets I had created. I also imported a character from Mixamo. In version 9 I added the idle animations onto the Mixamo character I added in the previous version. In version 10 I added a wooden shack, and inside of the shack I added a yellow light for the effect of a lamp inside of it. In version 11 I added the final version of the tree prefab. However, due to the textures on the tree, this caused a massive performance drop. To fix this, I added levels of detail. In version 12 I began to add the Cinemachine shots into the scene, as well as animations onto the character and onto the deer within the scene. I decided the deer I had modelled in Maya was not suitable for my scene, so I changed it for an asset from the asset store. Here are the 3 different stages of the tree asset that I had created. So the first one on the left is the white boxing stage, where it was more of just a placeholder for the actual tree, which is on the right, which I made using Autodesk Maya. Here is the progression of the deer assets used in my scene. The far left one again is a white boxing example, which was purely a placeholder, and then in the middle I made an attempt to create a deer using Maya. However, I decided that it was better for my scene if I was to use an asset from the asset store, so I used Malba's deer from Malba's Animations Animal Pack on the Unity asset store. Here are the 2 versions for the asset for the shack that I've made. So on the left is the white box in Pro Builder cube that I had used as a placeholder, and then on the right is the shack that I made using Autodesk Maya that has a door and windows, as well as a light inside of it. The first tool I used was the terrain tool. I used this tool for creating mountains and the waterfall. I also used the noise to create random bumps on the ground, as fields aren't flat. I used a prefab scatter tool from Polybrush to randomly place trees and bushes and grass and flowers into my scene. Using this tool allows me to place the assets completely random without them overlapping each other. Using this tool saved me a lot of time as I didn't have to manually place them. I used Autodesk Maya to create the shack, flower, grass, trees and chair within my scene. Here I am making the tree using a cylinder. I added extra subdivisions so that I could randomly adjust the vertexes to give a random bend to the tree, rather than it being completely straight. I then duplicated the first cylinder to create a branch. I then attached the branch onto the stem by moving its pivot point and attaching it to the stem. After adding all the branches, I then moved on to texturing and adding a bark texture to the tree. So here I added the bark texture, but it was quite stretched out, so I had to adjust how many times it was painted onto the shape. I then got a plane and added a leaf texture onto that. I then had to adjust the shape of the plane so that it was more like the leaf shape rather than just square. I then randomly grabbed vertexes and moved them up and down to create the random bumps that a leaf would have. I had to duplicate and rotate the plane, as the other side of the leaf was just black and had no texture. So I combined the two planes together to give a 3D leaf. After combining the two planes, I then started to put the leaves onto the branches by moving the pivot point to the end of the leaf. And there's the final result. I also used Photoshop for creating my skybox. I started by making 6 squares in the shape shown on the screen. I use this shape because this is how the skybox is created when you use a 6-sided skybox. I set up guidelines for my boxes so I knew where to exactly place the boxes. After placing the 6 blue squares, I started to paint them. So I did a darker blue towards the bottom, and then as it slowly goes up, it fades to a lighter blue. After drawing all the boxes, I added some white eclipses to signify the clouds which would be in the sky. After drawing all of the clouds, I then started to crop each individual square so that I could save them individually and export it from Photoshop and import it onto Unity. So I first saved the top square, then the left square, and so on. After saving all the squares, it was time to import them onto Unity, and then create a new material and change the shader type to a 6-sided skybox. After doing this, I could then apply the sides to the sides which are according to them. So front to front, left to left, and right to right. I could then apply the skybox into the scene, and it would be visible in-game. Thank you for watching.